You're listening to Good Shepherd Brentwood's Sermon Feed. Today's sermon was preached by Mother Natalie Van Kirk and recorded on the 21st Sunday after Pentecost, October 22nd, 2023.
It probably won't surprise you very much to know that if one of those articles with a title like 10 Reasons Why People Don't Go to Church appears in my news feed, that I usually read it. Sometimes there are real insights in those articles that can help me think about how to approach the community both within and the community from without our walls. Mostly, though, the articles are full of the same excuses. One of my favorites is some variation on the, I just don't really understand it and what's going on there. And I always want to jump up and shout, well, if you don't come, you're never going to understand it. But then there's one of the other top 5. I don't go to church because they're always asking for money. And the excuse that almost always goes with it is, I don't go to church because if you don't give a lot of money and aren't as educated as everybody else and don't belong to the same social status as everybody else, no one's going to pay any attention to you. The preacher only has time for rich people. I get really frustrated by those sorts of comments. Now, maybe there are some churches in the world where those things are true, but I think a whole lot of it is projection and self-protection. People imagine that this is the way that the church behaves because that is the way that they would behave in a similar situation. And here's what I want to say. Your ability to give the amount that you give does not affect the amount of attention or care that you receive in this church. And it is true, we do ask for money. Once a year, we have a focused stewardship campaign that funds our budget. The budget is about maintaining our platform for teaching and preaching the good news and forming Christian community. And during the rest of the year, we ask for money or for donations of items that support our mission efforts. Our mission in Ecuador, fuel bags, shower up, food for the poor, things like that. We really wouldn't be much of a church, would we, if we didn't do that kind of work in our community. At Good Shepherd, though, our focus always is on becoming devoted followers of Christ and being Christ's hands and feet in our community around us and the community of our world. Every year, we try and get better at those things. And so, even if we had a magical pot of money that paid for everything that we want to do, we would still need to give of our own money. And I want to explain this morning why that is so. Jesus said, the first and great commandment is this, that you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And the reason we need to give is because we need to be able to bring our whole heart to it. And because without doing that, our worship is incomplete. Worship, I have to say, worship is not about sitting in a building somewhere and maybe singing a few songs and having someone talk at you and having someone pray at you and then getting a wafer and wine. That's not what worship is about. Worship cannot be done for you, and it cannot be done to you. Worship is about being amazed and awed by a God who created the universe and is at the same time not too far away or too uncaring, so that we're not loved and we're not invited into a relationship with that same God. Worship is about expressing our gratitude and our love in return for a God that loved us so much that he came and dwelt among us to get us out of the ditch that we were in. Worship is about allowing the great tractor beam of God's grace to draw us ever closer to the source of the glory that we were meant to share. Worship is a grand and glorious thing, and it transforms us. But you cannot bring your soul, your mind, your strength to worship and leave behind your heart. When Jesus talks about your heart, he's not talking about your emotions. In the ancient world, the source of your fuzzy, warm feelings about other people and other things was not your heart. It was your stomach and the lower organs. And when Jesus talked about the heart, he was talking about the seat of your intelligence and your apprehension, as well as the organ that pumped blood, the very stuff of life itself to rest the rest of your body. So to love God with your heart is to love God with your life, to know God, and to at least desire to know God. And if we're going to do that, then we have to pick up the screen of ourself and move it out of the way. And that's what giving is really about, is picking up that screen of self and moving it out of the way. In the Old Testament, in the Torah, people are instructed to give a tithe or 1/10 of their produce as an offering to God. Now, the tithe could have been money, but there were very few people in a barter economy who actually had coins. The tithe actually specifies that it's to be given as 1/10 of the grain, the olive oil, the wine, the fruit, and any livestock that someone had. The tithe was produce. Produce was food and the very means of survival. To give of your means of survival from one year to the next is a profound act of trust and obedience. It's a way of saying to God that God is first in your heart. It is, by the way, also the reason for the Sabbath. For one day, God instructs his people to give up doing that which ensures their survival, to rest, to not be a slave to work. And that also is a profound act of trust and obedience. It is another way of giving up your means of survival. Now, in our time and place, there are very few of us whose means of survival is found in a garden and in the animals that we raise. Thank heavens, I don't know how I would deal with being paid in chickens. Instead, our security and our survival is manifested in the money that we earn. Parting with that which is your security and your survival is scary. And that's why there's a part of every single one of us, me too, that gets instantly worried and fretful when we have no real expectation for getting something back for the money that we give. And that's also why we don't worry and fret nearly so much when we go out and buy something. Even if we don't need the something, at least we've got something in return for our money. But to give without thought of return, that's frightening. Now, human beings get really deeply attached to the things that we believe give us security and ensure our survival. Our hearts become fixed on those things, and they color all of our perceptions, and they become the screen through which we see everything. But true worship, in all of its forms, means offering ourselves, all of ourselves, to God. And so it means moving that screen of self so that we can see God and allow God into the heart, into the very middle of our lives. And when we do that, our view of the world changes. We can finally see the gifts and the blessings in our lives. We can finally feel the gratitude which enables generosity. And then we know a true lightness of being, or joy, that deep, fundamental joy that lifts all of life and makes it livable. Could somebody bring me some water, please? That's why, even if we had a great big magical pot of money that paid for everything here, thank you, and we don't, we would still need to give. Because if we do not move that screen, we will trap ourselves in a world of self-focus, of ingratitude, of unhappiness. And the more ungenerous we are, the more dissatisfied we are, the more scared we feel that we just don't have enough. And the more fearful and stingy we become. It's a vicious cycle. Now, for most of my adult life, at least till I was 30, after I was 30, I've been a senior lay leader or a clergy person in every church that I've attended. For at least half of that time, I was not obedient to God's command to tithe. I wanted to be. But my spouse and I did not share the same values and could not come to agreement on this. And that's not very different. Lots of couples are in that situation. The time I came closest to tithing in all those years was when our household was trying to feed, clothe, and care for 2 toddlers and 2 adults on about $300 a month after all the bills were paid, and I used to give $20 a month of it to the church. But for most of those years, we could not agree how much our household should give, and so we didn't tithe. To make up for the inability to give financially, I gave a lot of volunteer hours to the church. I knew those volunteer hours were vital to the working of the church, but there was a part of me that was still restless and stressed. And that was especially true because I was in the leadership and I knew what the needs of the church actually were. And so every year when it came around, I have to tell you, I hated stewardship time. I'd find reasons not to go to church. Have any of you found reasons not to go to church during stewardship time when somebody was going to talk to you about money? I'm not asking you to raise your hand. Stewardship time always made me feel guilty, and it made me more stressed. I always felt like I was holding back. I knew deep inside of me that I was, even if I said, this is all I can give. And so when I finally got a job that paid me, I made the decision to tithe my income. Now, don't get me wrong, I was only making $14,000 a year, so my tithe was not making a huge change in the church budget. But it was my way to fully worship God. And the stress level dropped. I I didn't feel guilty anymore. I didn't hate stewardship anymore. And I didn't feel like deep down inside I knew that I was actually holding part of myself back. I think the negative feelings were the sign of a real inner conflict, a deep spiritual conflict that I couldn't quite name or face. But that great tractor beam of grace was drawing me ever more closely to God, and there was part of my life that was still being set aside, a holdout. Holding on and holding out was painful. And so it made me feel guilty and angry when people talked about money. Now, over the years, Father Fred and I have given a lot of money to different charities and programs, but I have to say to you that there's no other charity that gives or satisfies the giving back to God from what God has given us tension, like giving to the church or church-related programs. We've given to a lot of wonderful charities, but there are very few that say, the work we do in the name of Jesus Christ. And that's where our tithe goes. Of course, now, I know that most or a lot of what I give is going to go to pay salaries and keep the air conditioning on and fix things that need to be fixed. I'm the rector. How could I not know that? Right? But I also know this. The church, the local church, just like Good Shepherd, is an outpost of God's kingdom in this world. And when we live together like that is true, when we teach one another what that looks like, when we help those who are in need, we are doing something holy and something bright. And when we declare that this is the church, this is the community that we want to be, then we have moved those screens of self out of the way. We're not worrying about our security and our survival and our offerings to God then have the brightness that shines through all of us in gratitude, in generosity, and in joy. So, yes, we do ask for money. And, of course, we use that money to pay for all the things that we do. But I have to tell you, deep down, we are not asking for your money for the sake of money. We are asking for your money because we want that great tractor beam of grace to pull you ever closer to God so that all of us live together and live lives out of God's abundance, His life without limit, and God's freedom. Hear these words that the prophet Isaiah spoke to the people of Israel. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has dawned upon you. Nations will stream to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawning. You will call your walls salvation and all your portals praise. The sun will no more be your light by day, nor by night you will not need the brightness of the moon. Isaiah spoke to the people of God about what it would be like if they lived their lives fully into the life that God had called him. He also speaks that to us. It is my prayer that we live and love and work together at Good Shepherd so that everyone may see our brightness, that they will find within our walls salvation, and that they will hear praise from every door. Amen.
Thanks for listening. If you're interested in hearing our sermons in real time, you can check us out at our website, www.goodshepherdbrentwood.org. or attend online during our 10:15 Sunday live stream on YouTube. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Good Shepherd Brentwood. If you have any questions or comments, or maybe you'd like to meet with one of our clergy, you can email us at office@goodshepherdbrentwood.org. Or, if you're interested in visiting in person or have questions about our programs and services, you can text 615-637-3738, where you'll be contacted by our staff. We'd love to meet you.